There were photos, private photos I'd taken years ago, but there they were, for everyone to see. The post said, "This is the woman teaching our children. A hypocrite. A woman without morals." People were making up stories, false accusations, things that never happened, things I would never do. There's a moment in life when everything you've built crumbles in an afternoon. Not gradually, but all at once. For me, it happened on an October day in Massachusetts, when I was 61 years old. My name is Margaret Richardson. I was a school teacher for 33 years. And I'm going to tell you about the year that broke me, and the year that taught me who I really am. This is not a story about being a victim. It's a story about being human, about trust, about friendship, about forgiveness, and about learning to see people really see them when it's almost too late. I hope you'll stay with me. 41 is that in-between age in America. Not old enough to be invisible, not young enough to feel like the best is still ahead of you. You're stuck in the middle, watching time slip away, wondering if you've done enough, been enough. I taught English at Lincoln High School in Massachusetts for 20 years. 20 years of reading essays, grading papers until midnight, parent-teacher conferences, where I had to explain why their kid wasn't doing their homework. 20 years of students whose names I still remember, whose lives I still think about, even though most of them forgot me the day they graduated. You know what they don't tell you about teaching? The loneliness of it. You stand in front of 30 teenagers every day. You guide them. You inspire them. You push them to be better. And then they leave. And you go home to an empty house. The front door closes. And the silence is so loud it sounds like a scream. I had a husband named David. 17 years of marriage. He was a good man, responsible, successful, a vice president at a pharmaceutical company. But married is a complicated word, isn't it? It doesn't always mean together. David would come home every evening. He'd hang up his coat. He'd ask me about my day, not because he wanted to know, but because that's what you do. That's the script you follow. Then he'd sit down with his phone or his newspaper, and we'd exist in the same house, like two people living separate lives. I had a son, Robert, 16 years old at the time, smart kid, good athlete, but already disappearing into the world of video games and social media, more present in his room than in the rest of the house. I understood it. Being a teenager in 2023 is its own kind of loneliness. Everything is available on a screen. But somehow that makes real connection harder to find. And then there was Sarah. Sarah Morrison, my best friend for over 20 years. Or so I thought. Do you remember having a best friend? Not an acquaintance. Not someone you see out of obligation. A real best friend. Someone you could call at 2 in the morning. Someone who knew you before you became who you are now. I had that with Sarah. Or I believed I did. 10 years ago, Sarah's life fell apart. Her marriage was crumbling. Her small insurance business was failing. She was drowning. And I was the one who threw her a rope. My husband helped her husband get a job at his company. I sat with her late into the night, listening to her cry. I loaned her money. I told her she was strong. I told her she'd get through this. I loved her like a sister, and I never expected to regret it. But here's what you learn when you're 41. Sometimes the people who benefit most from your kindness remember it as obligation. Sometimes they remember it with resentment. Sometimes they look at your life and think, she had it easy. Everything just fell into place for her. My suffering meant nothing compared to her comfort. Over the years, something shifted between us. I could feel it. The way her smile sometimes didn't reach her eyes. The way she'd comment on my house, my car, my job. You're so lucky, Margaret. Everything just comes so easily to you in a tone that didn't sound like admiration. But I was a woman who believed in loyalty, in working through problems, in forgiveness. I taught my students these values. I lived by them. I didn't want to see the bitterness underneath. So I didn't. I pushed those feelings away, told myself I was being paranoid, told myself Sarah was just going through difficult times, told myself the tension I felt was my own insecurity. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was. Or maybe I wasn't blind. Maybe I just didn't want to see, because seeing the truth would mean admitting that I'd spent 20 years building a friendship with someone who resented me. That kindness alone wasn't enough to create real love. That took grief to teach me. The fall I turned 41, everything was routine. I was thinking about retirement. Maybe in a few years I'd finally have time. Time to travel. Time to read all the books I'd been meaning to read. Time to figure out who I was when I wasn't being someone's teacher, or someone's wife, or someone's mother. But mostly I was thinking, is this all there is? I'd wake up, teach, come home. David would be distant. Robert would be in his room. I'd grade papers. I'd go to bed. And the next day, I'd do it all again. There was a sadness to it. Not the kind that makes you cry. Just a quiet emptiness. The feeling that life was happening to me, not with me. I was wondering if I'd missed something. If I'd made wrong choices. If there was supposed to be more joy, more connection, more meaning. And then came October. One afternoon, I was getting ready to leave school. One of my students, a girl named Emma, came up to me. She looked nervous. "Miss Richardson," she said quietly, "you should probably check the community forums. When you get home." My stomach dropped. I didn't know why, but some part of me knew whatever was on those pages was bad. I drove home with my hands shaking. I made tea, sat at my kitchen table, and I searched the parent forum. There were photos. My photos. Private photos I'd taken years ago of myself in my bathroom, tracking my diet progress. The kind of photos millions of women take. Photos you keep to yourself, but there they were, for everyone to see. The post underneath said, "This is the woman teaching our children. Look at her. A hypocrite. A woman without morals." And the comments. There were hundreds of them. "How can we trust her? I'm removing my daughter from her class. She should be fired. This explains why my son is doing poorly in her class." People were making up stories, false accusations, things that never happened, things I would never do. I sat in my kitchen for an hour. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just existed in shock. This couldn't be happening. No one had access to these photos except me. Unless someone I knew, someone I trusted, had stolen them. When you're 41, your reputation is almost all you have left. You can't start over anymore. There's no next job. There's no fresh start. You have one reputation, built over 40 years, and it can be destroyed in one afternoon. If you're finding the story compelling, please hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Your support helps us share more important stories like this one. Now, let's continue with what happened next. I called the school. The principal said to stay home for a few days. I called David. He didn't answer. I called Robert. His voice was strange when he picked up. Cautious. "Mom, people at school are talking about you. I can't really talk right now." He hung up. I stood in my kitchen looking out at the street, where I'd lived for 17 years. The street where everyone now knew what I'd supposedly done. And I realized this is what isolation feels like. Not gradual. All at once. The people who were supposed to love you disappear not physically, but in every way that matters. I'd never felt more alone. I went to a detective agency in Boston the next day, a small office in an old building. A man named Michael, who'd spent 30 years chasing criminals through technology. I told him everything about the photos, about who might have access to them. He listened. He didn't judge. In my experience, he said quietly, hackers don't work like this. They don't publish personal photos just to destroy someone. They blackmail. They hide. This looks like someone close to you. Someone who wants you to suffer. The room went cold. Michael's team investigated for 2 weeks. 2 weeks where I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except who did this, who hates me this much. I went to school once to get my things. Parents had complained. There were petitions. One mother called me to say I was a disgrace. I hung up on her. I went to the grocery store. Neighbors looked away. I went to my doctor. The nurse looked embarrassed to see me. This is what happened to my life. In 2 weeks I became a ghost. Not dead, just invisible. David came home less and less. Robert stayed in his room more. And I sat in my house alone, wondering how the people who were supposed to love me could abandon me so easily. Then Michael called. We found something, he said, but you're not going to like it. There was no hacking. The photos came from an IP address in my home. Either David or Robert had uploaded them, and the posts came from a block near my neighborhood. Someone I knew lived there. We're still investigating, Michael said, but we're close. I drove around my neighborhood that day, looking at every house, wondering which one contained someone who hated me enough to destroy my life. The person who did this was close enough for me to see, close enough to be someone I knew. That night, I sat in my kitchen. No music, no distraction, just my thoughts getting darker. What if it was David? What if he'd been planning to leave for months and was using this as his excuse? What if it was Robert? What if my own son, angry about rules or money or attention, had decided to punish me? But how would Robert get my photos? I kept my phone locked. My passwords were private, unless he'd seen me type it in. Unless he'd borrowed my phone at some point and hadn't told me. Unless there was some detail I'd forgotten that would explain how my own child could betray me. I didn't confront anyone that night. I decided to wait, to let Michael do his work, to get proof before I accused the people I loved. But the waiting was killing me. Every time Robert came downstairs, I studied his face. Did he look guilty? Did he look nervous? Did he look like someone who'd destroyed his mother's life? I couldn't tell. I'd raised him for 16 years, and I couldn't read his face anymore. On day 15, Michael called with a breakthrough. We found something in your son's gaming account history. Someone was making expensive purchases, adding your credit card information. I felt my legs go weak. Over $10,000 in purchases, Michael said. In-game items. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that someone was blackmailing your son. Someone he met in an online game. Someone who convinced him to steal your intimate photos as insurance. I couldn't breathe. Your son is 16, Michael said gently. Someone was threatening him. When you're that age, when you're already scared, you'll do things you never thought you'd do. I understood what Michael was saying. My son had betrayed me, not out of malice, out of fear, and I didn't know if I could forgive him for that. I know this is heavy. I know it's painful to hear, but I need you to stay with me. The most important part is coming. Michael found the person who'd blackmailed Robert. It took another week, but when he told me who it was, I felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach. It was Sarah, my best friend of 20 years, the woman I'd helped through her divorce, The woman I'd supported through her business struggles. The woman I'd invited into my home. The woman I'd loved like a sister. Sarah had been playing games online, targeting teenagers. Teenagers whose parents she knew. Teenagers who were vulnerable. She'd befriended Robert, made him feel special, made him feel like he had a friend who understood him. And then she'd set the trap. She'd shown him a gaming account with expensive items, let him play for a while, made him feel special, and then accused him of stealing. "Pay me back or I'll call the police," she'd said. "I'll tell your school." And when Robert panicked, when he said he didn't have money, she made a new offer. "Send me your mother's photos, and I'll forgive the debt." My 16-year-old son had sent his mother's intimate photos to this woman because he was scared, and Sarah had used those photos to destroy me. When Michael told me this, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I broke. Internally, like something inside me shattered. Because I understood that Sarah hadn't just betrayed me. She'd betrayed my son. She'd manipulated a child. She'd used his fear and his loneliness as weapons. And she'd done it intentionally. To hurt me. "What do I do now?" I asked Michael. "You decide if you want to press charges." I looked out his window at the Boston skyline, at the city where people I'd known for decades were reading posts about my intimate photos. "I need to think," I said, but I already knew the answer. I went home, and Robert was sitting at the kitchen table. He hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red. His hands were shaking. "Mom," he said, "I need to tell you something." And in his voice I heard fear, shame, a desperate need for his mother to love him anyway. I realized that regardless of what Sarah had done, my son was also a victim. He was a child who'd been preyed upon by an adult. I had to choose whether I would punish him for his weakness or forgive him for his fear. I sat down across from him and listened. He told me everything about the gaming acquaintance, how it started innocently, two people playing games, sharing strategies, building what felt like friendship. He told me about the day this person, this woman, he didn't realize was Sarah, offered to give him access to her gaming account. "It felt special, Mom," he said, "like I was part of something." And then it changed. She accused him of stealing, showed him screenshots of credit card charges, proof he owed her thousands of dollars. "I was so scared," Robert said. "I thought she was going to call the police. I thought my future was over." "What did you do?" I asked. He started crying. "She said if I gave her your photos, she'd forgive the debt. She said it was just insurance, that she wouldn't do anything with them, that nobody would ever see them." "But they did," I said quietly. "I know. And I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand what I was doing. I was scared and I was stupid, and I ruined everything." I looked at my son, this boy I'd raised, this child who'd been manipulated by a grown woman into betraying his own mother, and I made a decision. I reached across the table and took his hand. "You made a mistake," I said. "A bad mistake. But you're still my son, and I still love you." He sobbed, great heaving sobs, all the fear and guilt and shame pouring out of him. I got up and held him, and I realized something that took 41 years to understand. Your children will fail you, and you will have to love them anyway, because that's what mothers do. That's what life is, an endless practice in forgiving the people who matter. But David was different. That night, he came home late. He walked into the kitchen where I was sitting. "We need to talk," he said. "Yes," I said. "We do. I saw the posts. I saw the photos. And I don't know what to believe." "You could have asked me," I said. "You could have listened to me instead of just leaving." He didn't respond. Your son was manipulated by an adult, I said. By someone I trusted. He was scared. He made a mistake. But you just decided I was guilty. You just left. I don't know what to believe, he said again. And I realized in that moment that David wasn't angry at me for the photos. He was relieved to have an excuse to leave. The photos were just permission. Permission to be the person he'd wanted to be all along, someone free from his obligations, free from his wife. I've already filed for divorce, he said quietly. The papers are ready. I know, I said. I could feel it coming. He looked shocked that I wasn't shocked. 17 years, he said. And this is how it ends. No, I said. This isn't how it ends. This is just where it ends. How it happened was slow. We stopped seeing each other years ago. We just kept living in the same house and pretending it was okay. He had nothing to say to that. You can go, I said. File your papers, but understand something you didn't leave because of the photos. You left because you wanted to leave. And that's okay. But don't pretend it's because of me. He left that night, and I realized I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even particularly sad. I was relieved. Because living with someone who doesn't see you is worse than living alone. Now I had to deal with Sarah. Michael asked me to come in again. He had evidence, testimony, screenshots, everything we needed to press charges. Sarah had done this to other families, not just me, not just Robert. She'd been running this scam for years, finding vulnerable teenagers online, blackmailing them, using their parents' photos for extortion. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a crime. What do you want to do? Michael asked. I had options. I could press charges. The police would support me. The community would rally around me. I would win. But I would also spend my remaining years in court, in hatred, in the weight of revenge. And I realized something that younger people can't understand at 41. You don't have that kind of time. Every moment you spend on rage is a moment you don't spend on healing. I need to see her, I said. That's not advisable, Michael said. I don't care. I need to see her. I need to understand. So Michael arranged it. A controlled setting. A meeting where Sarah had to tell the truth. And when I saw her, my best friend of 20 years, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. I felt sadness. I felt like I was looking at a person I'd never really known at all. Sarah looked smaller than I remembered. Like the years of carrying resentment had physically shrunk her. We sat across from each other with Michael present. No one else. Just two women who used to be sisters. Why? I asked. She couldn't look at me. Why, Sarah? We were friends for 20 years. I helped you. I loved you. I know, she said quietly. Then why would you do this? She was quiet for a long time. Because I hated you, she finally said. And in that moment, something broke open. Not in me, in her. I hated that everything came so easily to you, she said, her voice shaking. I hated that you had the perfect marriage, the perfect house, the perfect job. I hated that you helped me like I was some charity case. I hated that you made me feel like I owed you everything. And when I looked at you, all I could see was everything I'd failed at. Sarah, let me finish, she said. When you helped me, you made me smaller. Do you understand that? Every time you gave me money, every time you consoled me, every time you were strong while I was weak, you were reminding me that I wasn't good enough, that I needed you to survive. I understood what she was saying, but I also understood something else. That's on you, Sarah. Not on me. I was trying to help. I know. That's what made it worse. Because if you'd been cruel about it, I could have hated you properly. But you were kind, and your kindness made me feel smaller. I sat back in my chair. So you decided to destroy me, I said. I decided to even the score, she said. I decided that if I could make you feel as small as I'd always felt, maybe I would finally feel normal. This is what I learned in that moment. The people who hurt us most are the people we've loved too well. And sometimes they hurt us not because we did something wrong, but because they're suffering in ways we can't see, ways we haven't bothered to look for. Did you ever consider, I asked, that you could have just talked to me? That you could have said, Sarah, I feel small around you. I feel like I owe you everything. Can we talk about that? Would you have listened? She asked. And I had to be honest. I don't know, I said, because I was so busy being the helper. I was so busy being the strong one. I wasn't really looking at you as a person. I was looking at you as a project, a friend I could save. Sarah looked at me then, really looked at me. So this is both our fault, she said. I don't think in terms of fault anymore, I said. I think in terms of understanding. I understand how you got here. I understand what made you do this. And I understand that you used my son as a weapon, that you manipulated a child. She flinched. That I can't forgive, I said. Not easily, anyway. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to make a choice about what kind of person I want to be. Because I can press charges. I can destroy you like you tried to destroy me. I can spend my remaining years making sure you pay for what you did. Or I can do something else. What? She asked. I can let you go, I said. And I realized as I said it that it was true. I could let all of this go. Not because Sarah deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. You're not going to press charges? She asked, shocked. I didn't say that. I said I'm going to let you go, meaning I'm going to stop carrying you. I'm going to stop thinking about you. I'm going to stop letting what you did define my life. But what about justice? She asked. Justice is for the courts to decide, I said. What I'm deciding is what I do with my own life. Michael was watching this exchange carefully. What I am going to do, I continued, is make sure you can't hurt other people. I'm going to cooperate with authorities. I'm going to testify. I'm going to make sure they understand the pattern of what you've been doing. And then I'm going to walk away. Margaret, you don't get to use my first name anymore, I said quietly. You forfeited that right. And I meant it. I pressed charges. Sarah was arrested 2 weeks later. The police found evidence of her preying on dozens of teenagers, dozens of families, years of manipulation and blackmail. The case went through the system. Prosecutors built their case. Evidence was presented. And through it all, I testified. I told my story. I told them how Sarah had manipulated my son, how she'd used his fear as a weapon, how she'd tried to destroy my reputation and my life. The judge sentenced her to 5 years. For what she'd done to me, for what she'd done to the others. And when the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I said no, because I wasn't going to stand there and talk about my suffering. I'd already spent too much time on that. Instead, I walked out of that courtroom and I left her behind. Literally. I didn't look back. I didn't think about what was happening to her. I didn't carry the weight of her punishment. Because that was the real forgiveness, not saying it's okay, or I understand. But rather, what you did was wrong, and now I'm moving on. And I did. 6 months later, I was back in my classroom. The online posts were gone. The rumors had faded, replaced by newer gossip about other people, other lives. The internet has a beautiful cruelty it forgets very quickly. What feels like the end of your world on Monday is completely irrelevant by Friday. which means the pain won't last forever. But it also means you were never as important as you thought, neither good nor bad, just human. My school asked me back. Parents withdrew their complaints. Life moved forward. But I was different. Quieter. Sadder, maybe. But also gentler. Not to myself, but to everyone else. Because I understood now everyone is fighting something. Everyone is carrying shame or fear or resentment that you can't see. And the smallest kindness, really seeing a person, matters more than you'll ever know. David signed the divorce papers. We settled amicably. He paid me what was fair. We sold the house. It was all very civilized and very sad. The day I moved out, I walked through every room. I thought about the 17 years we'd lived there, all the meals we'd eaten, all the holidays we'd celebrated, all the nights we'd gone to bed in silence. And I felt grateful, not for the marriage, which had been more of a habit than a love, but for what it taught me, that staying isn't always the same as loving, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone go. Robert and I went to therapy. It took a long time for him to stop feeling guilty. Longer still for him to understand that what happened wasn't his fault. He was a child. Sarah was an adult. She made the choice to manipulate him. But I think maybe he finally understands now. We have dinner together once a week. We talk, really talk, about his life, his fears, his dreams. We're not pretending anymore. We're just two people who love each other, trying to do better. That's all you can ever really do. As for Sarah, I haven't seen her since that day in Michael's office, and I don't think about her, not anymore. Not because I've achieved some Buddhist state of enlightenment, not because I'm so evolved that I can forgive all trespasses, but simply because I made a choice to put her down and walk away. And I've kept that choice. There was a moment, about a year after all of this happened, when I was walking through the grocery store, the same grocery store where I used to see neighbors who looked away from me, and I ran into someone I knew. A woman named Patricia. We used to serve on the school board together. "Margaret," she said, surprised. "How are you?" And I realized I could answer that question two ways. I could say I'm destroyed. I'm broken. I'll never be the same. Or I could say I'm well. I'm learning. I'm becoming someone new. Both would be true. But I chose the second one because I realized something in that moment. My life isn't defined by what happened to me. It's defined by how I respond to it. I'm the person who survived. I'm the person who chose forgiveness, not the easy kind, but the hard kind. The kind that means looking someone in the eye and saying, "What you did was wrong, and I'm not going to let it destroy me." That's power. That's freedom. Now I want to tell you what I learned. What I would tell you if you were sitting in my living room, drinking coffee, thinking about your own life. First, your reputation matters less than you think. At 60, at 70, at 80, what people say about you will fade. The shame you feel now will pass. The humiliation will be forgotten. And you will still be here, still breathing, still living. The person who hurt you will be forgotten long before you are. Second kindness without seeing people is just performance. You can give and give and give. But if you're not really looking at the person you're helping, you're just making them smaller. So see people. Really see them. Ask them who they are. Listen without planning what you'll say next. The most important thing you can do for another person is to see them. Not to fix them. Not to save them. Just to see them. Third, the people who matter, your children, your partner, your closest family, will fail you. They will disappoint you. They will make mistakes that hurt. And you have to love them anyway, because that's the whole point of family. It's not about being perfect. It's about staying, even when it's hard, even when they've hurt you, even when you're not sure how to forgive. You stay, and you figure it out. Fourth time is the one thing you can't get back. When you're young, you think time is infinite. When you're 60, you realize it's not. So spend it wisely. Don't spend it on rage. Don't spend it on people who hate you. Spend it on healing. Spend it on people who are trying. Spend it on becoming quieter, gentler, more at peace. And finally, and this is the most important thing, your life is not defined by the worst thing that happened to you. You are not the sum of your failures, your betrayals, your mistakes. You are the sum of how you responded to them. You are the person who chose to survive. I'm 43 now. I still teach. I still live in the same area. I have a small apartment now, just for me. And it's peaceful. I'm not happy in the way young people are happy. I don't have hope that the best is still coming. Because at my age, you know the best might have already passed. But I have something better. I have a quiet contentment, a knowledge that I survived something that would have destroyed a younger version of myself. I have wisdom. I have grace. I have the ability to let people go when it's time. And every day in my classroom, I see young people, teenagers, children, people who still think their reputation is everything, people who still think they have infinite time. And I watch them with such tenderness, because I know they'll understand these things too, someday, when they're old enough to have lost something, when they're old enough to realize that the things that seemed so important when they were young don't matter at all. I think about them, and I think you'll have your own moment of reckoning. You'll be betrayed by someone you loved. You'll disappoint someone who believed in you. You'll face a moment where everything you built seems to crumble, and you'll survive it. Just like I did. Just like everyone does. Because that's the secret that aging teaches you. Humans are more resilient than we know, more forgiving than we think, more capable of survival than we ever imagined. And the years we spend here, all of them, even the painful ones, they matter. They make us who we are. They teach us that life is not about never falling. It's about getting back up. Again, and again, and again. If you're watching this now and you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, or beyond, I want you to know something. Whatever happened to you, whatever you lost, whatever you failed at, whatever you did that you regret, whatever was done to you that you didn't deserve, it wasn't a waste. It wasn't meaningless. It was the thing that made you wise. It was the thing that taught you to see people. It was the thing that taught you to forgive, not because people deserved it, but because you deserved the peace. You've lived long enough to understand that life isn't about winning. It's not about being right or being successful or having everyone respect you. It's about showing up.